station.
I love this era of WCW because I know that not a lot of people saw it. The business was down, but a lot of this stuff, there's some really great in-ring action here. We should also mention that this is around the same time that your run in WCW would start to come to an end. Dustin Rhodes is going to reach the finals of a tournament to decide the number one contender for the US title. That went down in January of 93. But around that same time is when Rick Rude was stripped of his title. So the tournament finale, which was originally designed to be for a number one contender, now the winner is going to become the new champion. As you see, if you're watching along with us on YouTube at grillingjr.com, it came down to Dustin versus his old tag team champion partner, Ricky Steamboat. And believe it or not, Dustin wins and he becomes the United States heavyweight champion for the very first time. Of course, Rick Rude would reclaim the title later in the year, but this is a big deal for Dustin. At this point, he had tag team title gold on a couple of occasions, but now he's the US champ. Once upon a time, that meant you were the number one contender. Quite a vote of confidence in Dustin. Were you surprised to see them put the title on him?
Put a lot of pressure on him.
Yes.
Gosh, all the boys in the locker room are not all of this overstatement. That's the Russell stuff. Last night late, I was watching. Wow. The David McLean.
David McLean's wrestling, women wrestling. Yeah.
And David was like, I can't remember the girl's name, lady, but he called her by her first and last name incessantly, which is about as old as technique wise as there is in wrestling. Well, there's Cowboy Bill Watts. Well, Cowboy Bill Watts could have been Cowboy. It could have been Watts. Could have been whatever. That's how announcing has been for generations. I've done the same damn thing. I'm not immune to it. But after hearing other shows and listening to as much wrestling as I do, it becomes annoying. So I'm consuming a lot of product on Reddit, as you could tell.
Yeah.
I'm a consumer pro wrestling stuff. And I still love it.
Well, let's talk about Dustin Rhodes here. We'll get back on track and talk a little bit about what's next for him. But I guess we should also mention that you're out of there. You know, by the time Dustin's the US champ, you're working for the World Wrestling Federation, and it's not too terribly long. And Dustin's tenure in WCW is due as well. It ends in March of 95. And this is a crazy, silly story. But as the story goes, he was wrestling Barry Darsow, not the Repo Man, not Demolition Smash, but Blacktop Bully, in a taped match that was called King of the Road. That meant they were fighting on the back of a tractor trailer. It aired on the WCW Uncensored pay-per-view, which was, I guess, trying to lean into the hardcore phenomenon and all the gimmick matches that were happening in ECW. But as I understand it, there was a strict no blood rule in WCW at the time. And I suppose Dustin and Barry and the agent for the match, Mike Graham, thought, well, how can we be beating the hell out of each other in a hardcore match on the back of a moving trailer and nobody bleeds? So they did. And because they broke policy, they were all fired. It became a controversial deal. What do you remember hearing about this? It seems kind of silly in hindsight.
What's part silly? Not having any blood?
The idea that you're going to fire a guy for bleeding on pay-per-view in a taped match. Like, you didn't have to air the shit,
but it was a specific edict.
Yes.
From the home office with no gray area, no blood, doesn't need interpretation. No blood is no blood. At least that's your own hand. And all those guys, or what they were doing, was typical pro wrestling blood. And it didn't get past the censor, shall we say. And the upper management people put a lot of pressure on Dusty for allowing it to happen. I don't think he allowed. I've called matches where there was blood that nobody ever talked about that just came up, or it worked, or it fit the moment, or what have you. But this was a direct. Trying to think of the word. It was a refusal to follow orders.
Well, let me ask you this though: if you were running talent relations, and I know at this time you're in the WWF, you're not in WCW. But let's say this happened in the WWF when you're running talent relations and you have this exact same circumstance happen. You're going to have two guys go out with a crew and an agent. They put this together.
Yeah.
Do you put the heat on the talent or the agent? Because it feels like to me, this is an agent thing, right?
Yeah, at least partially. At least partially. I wouldn't have booked that match.
No shit.
It's a gimmick match. There's only a few things you can do. On a trailer, a hay trailer. What it looked like to me, an old hay trailer, HAY trailer. So no, there's a good chance that whoever did violated the direct order be let go. Just like happened in WCW.
Well, we see for the first time Dustin now after he's been on TV wondering what next. As you might imagine, the WWF is going to be an opportunity. How do you first hear about what happened at Uncensored and that Dustin was fired, or maybe that he was available? Talk me through any or all of that.
Well, I didn't, there's so many rumors that go around. I wasn't sure exactly the lay of the land there. Were they fired? TFN? Were they fired without pay or basically put on suspension for 3 months or 6 months or whatever the case may be? It's not fair to suspend somebody for 6 months and not pay them. But if you pay them, then what good is the penalty?
Right.
It's a tough situation. Sometimes you're just better to cut your losses and move on, and then hopefully get the opportunity, just like Dustin did, to regroup and land on his feet in another location, another address.
The rumor and innuendo is at the time, Dusty is so pissed about the way Dustin was handled here and he was fired that he himself was ready to walk out of WCW. Had Dusty come to the WWF in 95, what do you think that would have looked like?
Well,
Obviously,
it all depends on who the booker is going to be in Dusty's place. If the booker was objective and creative, fundamentally sound, it would give some of those guys on the cover of that magazine we saw earlier an opportunity. Because until the changes were made, we all knew who the Bull of the Woods was. Pun intended. Dream. He was the guy.
I'm
So
asking, do you think he would have fit in the WWF system in 95? I'm talking about Dusty, not
as a
Dusty.
talent, yeah, as a talent, I think he would have. But to work with Bruce and Pat and Vince,
You don't think that could have worked?
I think it'd have been challenging.
Yeah. Why do you think Dusty could be a part of a quote unquote committee in WCW, but it would have been a challenge in the WWF? Just him and Vince button heads, maybe?
Oh, that'd be one reason. Yeah, certainly one reason. And I don't know how well he would have. Again, let's remember that Bruce and Pat had their territory,
Yes, absolutely.
and so anybody infringing in their territory was not unlike the story of Harley Race and Vince McMahon in Kansas City. It could have ended up very badly. So I just Dusty was used to sailing his own ship. He was used to being the captain of the boat, and sometimes you got to change roles. And so I don't think that he would have fit well in that deal. And I know that Bruce, especially Bruce, loved Dusty, but still, do you love him more than your job?
Right.
I'd say no on that one.